Before The Walking Dead became a clean, primetime televised phenomenon, zombie cinema was a dirty, lawless subgenre built on practical slime, bleak atmosphere, and total nihilism. In the wake of the 70s and 80s boom, dozens of filmmakers tried their hand at the reanimated dead. Beyond the famous shopping malls and military bunkers lay a bizarre underground of radioactive flesh eaters, ancient curses, and low-budget Italian splatter that pushed the boundaries of bad taste. Tonight, we're digging up 10 lesser-known zombie titles from the golden age of physical media. These are the films that avoided the mainstream spotlight, finding their home instead on the dusty bottom shelves of local video stores. From a fog-heavy shores of psychological horror to the absolute unhinged chaos of low-budget regional filmmaking, these are 10 deep-cut nightmares that prove there's plenty of life left in the dead.
The Video Dead, 1987. When a mysterious television set is mistakenly delivered to a suburban home, it doesn't just play late-night movies. It unleashes the undead. Soon zombies crawl out of the screen and into the real world, bringing bloodshed to the neighborhood while a new family moving in becomes their target. Directed by Robert Scott, The Video Dead is a true VHS-era cult film, built around its love of low-budget ingenuity and surreal horror. Roxana Augustin stars as Zoe, the teen daughter forced to confront the nightmare, while Rocky Duvall and Michael St. Michaels round out the cast of unlucky neighbors and zombie fodder. The film is remembered for its creative concept, the idea of a cursed TV bridging the gap between horror fiction and reality. The zombies here aren't your typical brain eaters. They're bizarre, almost dreamlike figures who toy with their victims before tearing them apart. Practical effects bring the carnage to life with plenty of gore and rubbery grotesqueries. What makes The Video Dead so enduring is its scrappy charm. It may not have had the polish of studio horror, but it makes up for it with energy, imagination, and a premise tailor-made for video store shelves. Its iconic box art, featuring a ghoul crawling from a TV screen, became a magnet for curious renters. While it never hit theaters, The Video Dead thrived in the VHS boom, gaining a reputation as one of the era's strangest and most inventive zombie films. It's a movie that embodies the spirit of late-night rentals. Rough around the edges, but impossible to forget once you've seen it. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, 1972. A theater troupe travels to a remote island cemetery for their director's twisted ritual, performing a ceremony to raise the dead as ultimate theatrical experience. What starts as elaborate prank becomes genuine nightmare when the dead actually rise and trap the group in a cottage, forcing them to survive until dawn. Bob Clark's early film operates as dark comedy horror, with surprising bite beneath its amateur aesthetics. Alan Ormsby, who also wrote the script, plays the insufferably theatrical director, whose arrogance and cruelty toward his troupe make him thoroughly unlikable. The supporting cast plays broadly, their performances matching the film's satirical edge about theater people and artistic pretension. The first half deliberately moves slowly, building character dynamics, and allowing the director's obnoxious behavior to create genuine audience desire for consequences. When the zombies finally rise, Clark stages their siege with real effectiveness, despite obvious budget constraints. The makeup effects are crude, but achieve atmosphere through sheer commitment and numbers. The zombies move with genuine menace, surrounding the cottage in steadily growing horde. Clark shoots the nighttime sequences with genuinely eerie lighting, making the island feel isolated and dangerous. The dark comedy tone shifts into legitimate horror as the group realizes their situation is hopeless, and their director's arrogance has doomed them. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things gained cult status through midnight screenings and home video, appreciated for its mean-spirited humor and surprisingly effective zombie siege, despite clearly limited resources. The Dead Next Door, 1989. In a post-apocalyptic world overrun by flesh-eating ghouls, the government deploys an elite task force known as the Zombie Squad to contain the outbreak and secure a rumored cure. Their mission leads them into Akron, Ohio, where they encounter a threat far more dangerous than the living dead, a fanatical religious cult led by Reverend Jones. Believing the zombie plague is a divine punishment ordained by God, the cult violently protects the undead and will slaughter anyone attempting to stop the apocalypse. As the zombie squad fights a two-front war against the ravenous hordes and heavily armed zealots, they must secure the cure before humanity is devoured. Directed by J.R. Bookwalter, the production is a feat of regional, do-it-yourself filmmaking. Shot entirely on amateur-grade Super 8mm film over 4 grueling years in Ohio, the project was secretly bankrolled by Sam Raimi, who funneled a portion of his earnings from Evil Dead 2 into the budget under the pseudonym The Master Cylinder. The film overcomes its shoestring financing with sheer ambition, featuring hundreds of extras, massive practical gore effects, and guerrilla-style action sequences. Despite its gritty, lo-fi visual texture, the film boasts a fast-paced comic book energy. Bruce Campbell supervised the post-production audio, anonymously dubbing the voices of multiple characters, including Commander Carpenter and a soldier named Raimi. Combining backyard ingenuity with genuine splatter movie scale, the film stands as a defining artifact of the late 1980s direct-to-video era, proving that apocalyptic visions could be realized on the most inaccessible margins of the independent horror industry. Messiah of Evil, 1974. Late one night, a young woman drives up the California coast in search of her missing father, a painter who vanished in a seaside town that seems frozen in time. What she finds there isn't simply isolation. It's a place infected by something ancient, spreading quietly through its people, like a dream that's forgotten upon waking. Messiah of Evil is one of the great forgotten nightmares of the 1970s horror. A surreal, slow-motion descent into madness that feels more like a hallucination than a movie. Written and directed by Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz, it channels the detached unease of Carnival of Souls and the doomed coastal atmosphere of The Fog, years before Carpenter made it literal. Everything about the film feels wrong in the best way. The architecture, the silence, the faces that stare too long. Even its most grounded moments seem haunted, as if the town itself is watching. The standout scenes, a supermarket feeding frenzy, a movie theater drenched in red light, are pure cinematic nightmare fuel, burned into the minds of anyone who's seen them. It's quiet, beautiful, and terrifying in equal measure. Messiah of Evil isn't about jump scares or gore. It's about the feeling of being alone somewhere familiar that suddenly doesn't belong to you anymore. Nightmare City, 1980. A news helicopter tracks a mysterious aircraft as it makes an unscheduled landing, and within minutes, the situation spirals into full-scale panic. What begins like a contained emergency quickly spreads across hospitals, television studios, and city streets, turning everyday locations into danger zones. The film wastes no time getting to the chaos, moving with the kind of urgency that defined a lot of fast-paced European horror. Instead of slow, shambling threats, the attackers here are aggressive and relentless, giving the movie a frantic energy that rarely lets up. Director Umberto Lenzi pushes momentum over explanation, stacking one crisis on top of another so the story feels like a rolling disaster report that keeps getting worse. The synth-heavy score drives that feeling even further, adding a constant pulse under every chase and confrontation. There's a rough-edged, exploitation-style intensity to the action that makes the film feel dangerous and unpredictable, especially compared to more polished studio horror of the same period. This is pure late-night tape horror, loud, messy, and packed with set pieces, the kind of movie you discover on a worn rental copy and remember for its sheer, unstoppable momentum. Burial Ground, 1981. An ancient curse shatters the tranquility of a countryside villa when a professor inadvertently breaks the seal on a forbidden crypt. His discovery awakens a legion of deeply decayed, weapon-wielding zombies that besiege the estate just as a group of wealthy guests arrive for a getaway. The isolated manor quickly devolves into a slaughterhouse as the rotting horde traps the vacationers inside. Unlike traditional shambling ghouls, these undead possess a terrifying, crude intelligence, utilizing scythes, machetes, and axes to dismantle the survivors one by one. The visceral, stomach-churning special effects work by Gino De Rossi defines the aesthetic of this notorious Italian production. Filmed during the peak of the European zombie boom, the visuals rely heavily on grotesque skull-like masks caked in dirt, cobwebs, and latex maggots. The cinematography traps characters in dimly lit corridors and claustrophobic gardens, emphasizing the sheer volume of the undead over intricate storytelling. Director Andrea Bianchi bypasses atmospheric subtlety, opting instead for a barrage of brutal, slow-motion violence and lingering close-ups on the tactile destruction of the human body. Operating far outside the bounds of mainstream taste, this unfiltered exercise in grindhouse exploitation is perhaps most infamous for a deeply unsettling performance by Peter Bark. Cast as the young son of Mariangela Giordano's character, the adult Bark's bizarrely dubbed presence adds a layer of surreal, psychosexual discomfort that culminates in one of European horror's most shocking sequences. It remains a legendary, sleazy staple, cherished by physical media archivists for its unapologetic cruelty and nightmarish, rotting atmosphere. Dead and Buried, 1981. Welcome to Potter's Bluff, where the tourists keep dying, but the town's population somehow stays the same. When Sheriff Dan Gillis investigates a series of brutal murders, he uncovers a conspiracy that challenges everything he knows about life, death, and his seemingly picture-perfect coastal community. At the center of it all is the town mortician, played with unsettling charm by Jack Albertson in his final role. What sets Dead and Buried apart is its unique approach to zombie mythology. This isn't your standard undead apocalypse. It's a slow-burn mystery where the walking dead are hiding in plain sight, going about their daily routines while harboring dark secrets. The film plays with themes of small-town identity and belonging, asking what people might sacrifice to keep their community alive. The murder sequences are notorious for their creativity and brutality. The opening beach sequence sets the tone, turning amateur photography into an instrument of terror. Each death is meticulously photographed by the townspeople, creating a disturbing connection between violence and art. Director Gary Sherman builds tension through careful pacing and misdirection. The film keeps viewers guessing by presenting multiple genres at once. Is this a slasher, a conspiracy thriller, a supernatural horror? The answer is all and none of these, as Dead and Buried carves its own unique path through horror territory. James Ferrantino brings complexity to Sheriff Gillis, portraying a man whose investigation forces him to question not just his town, but his own identity. Meanwhile, Jack Albertson's Dobbs steals every scene as the mortician who takes perhaps too much pride in his work. Their interactions crackle with tension as the truth slowly emerges. The film's screenplay by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett of Alien fame layers mystery upon mystery, leading to one of the most shocking twist endings of the era. Dead and Buried proves that sometimes the most effective horror comes from questioning not just who we can trust, but who we really are. The Grapes of Death, 1978. The story follows Elizabeth, a city woman headed to meet her fiancé at his family's vineyard. But the train ride turns creepy fast. A traveler with a grotesque bleeding neck boards, and she witnesses something horrifying that explodes the tension. Once she escapes, Elizabeth finds herself wandering into empty villages populated by locals suffering from gruesome boils and snarling disease. They stagger, haunted by the infection spreading like wild poison through their flesh. Rollin crafts an environment that feels both dreamlike and relentless. Sunlit forests feel ominous, empty farmhouses feel alive with threat, and every rustle or distant cry transforms into something deeply unnerving. The infection. It turns out to come from pesticide-tainted grapes. That innocent vineyard now feels like a chemical trap, a realistic, all-too-timely twist that turns rural French charm into ecological dread. Rollin's direction thrives on contrasts. Elegant wide shots of vineyards drenched in sunlight suddenly give way to visceral gore, pus, blood, and pitchfork carnage, all rendered in a style that's as surreal as it is shocking. The pacing unnerves. Tracking shots of empty corridors, isolated homes, and strange figures in windows build dread through atmosphere rather than cheap thrills. As much as it's a horror film, The Grapes of Death is also a cautionary tale, one about human hubris, careless chemical tampering, and the violence that blooms when you poison the land. Hell of the Living Dead, 1980. A top-secret chemical operation goes wrong, and the fallout doesn't stay contained for long. A recovery team and a group of journalists head into the affected region, expecting a controlled mission, only to find that the situation has already moved beyond anyone's ability to manage it. From there, the movie turns into a forward march through abandoned zones, hostile encounters, and mounting dread. The approach is raw and fast, built on urgency rather than polish. Director Bruno Mattei assembles the film with a grindhouse rhythm, quick scenes, sharp turns, and constant forward motion, giving it that unmistakable shock cinema feel. It's less about careful logic and more about escalating danger, with each new location presenting another threat or complication. One of the standout elements is the driving electronic score, which adds scale and intensity to the action and helps glue together the film's many moving parts. Combined with on-location shooting and chaotic crowd sequences, it gives the story a bigger footprint than you might expect from its budget. What makes it memorable is its relentless tone. There's very little safety once the team enters the hot zone, and every decision feels like it comes a step too late. For fans of scrappy, high-energy outbreak horror, this is a prime example of how far pure momentum can carry a movie. Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, 1974. In the mid-70s, when zombie movies were starting to claw their way into horror history, Spain and Italy teamed up to give us Let Sleeping Corpses Lie. Directed by Jorge Grau, it takes the classic Undead formula and gives it a fresh twist with a dose of environmental paranoia. The story follows George, played by Ray Lovelock, who's just trying to make his way through the English countryside. A chance run-in with a young woman named Edna, played by Christina Galbo, ends up pulling him into something far darker than either of them could have expected. Local scientists are experimenting with a new kind of technology that uses ultrasonic radiation to kill insects. But of course, this being horror, that little invention has a side effect. Suddenly, the quiet green countryside is crawling with flesh-hungry zombies. George and Edna find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time, getting blamed for a string of murders while the real culprits, the undead, keep multiplying. Standing in their way is an inspector, played by Arthur Kennedy, whose arrogance and prejudice only make things worse. His refusal to see what's really happening turns him into almost as big a threat as the zombies themselves. What sets this one apart from other zombie flicks of the time is how it mixes social commentary with its scares. Grau uses the film to talk about pollution, technology, and the dangers of messing with nature. The English countryside looks gorgeous on screen, but it's constantly contrasted with gore and decay, driving home the film's ecological warning. And speaking of gore, the zombie attacks here are brutal and memorable, with some of the best practical effects of the era. But it's never just shock for shock's sake. Everything ties back into that uneasy balance between humanity, science, and nature. Let Sleeping Corpses Lie is often compared to Romero's Night of the Living Dead, and while the influence is obvious, it brings its own flavor to the genre. It's atmospheric, it's unsettling, and it has just enough brains, no pun intended, to make it more than just another zombie movie. Nearly 50 years later, it still holds up as one of the standout Euro horror takes on the undead. If you're a fan of zombie cinema and you haven't checked it out, this one's absolutely worth digging up.
That's it for tonight's episode. If you want to help us keep the archive alive and growing, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. And remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is somebody's favorite.